Hey everyone, welcome to week 6, and I want to apologize for apparently the wrong video was posted, and I'm not sure what happened to the actual video I recorded for this week, but I am redoing that, and hopefully we'll clear up some questions some people had. So going into the lesson planning for your units, you're going to be planning 3 to 5 lessons for your inquiry unit. Based on the standard that you've been working on. And but I really, if you want to change standards, if you've now found a new standard that will work better, or for some reason in your teaching environment, you've moved on or you didn't get to that standard. So I want you to make this as relevant and useful as possible. If you're not in a classroom, then you're just going to choose one to work on that you think might be useful in your prospects for teaching in the future. So the goal of this is really just to go through the process of planning some lessons. And for my class, you're actually only going to turn in one of the 3 lessons. And so you've already done some work on that, though. So if you can stick with what you've been working on, that will help, but it's not required. So hopefully that clears up some questions. Your assessment plan was designed to help you move towards being prepared to finally write the lesson. The other thing that we did last week was the probe and the looking at preconceptions. And I made some changes to the schedule. We're actually going to just pause on that information in terms of going forward. You might have seen some rearranging of the assignments. We're going to pick that back up at the end of the and give you time to plan. I know many of you are doing some full-time teaching and possibly teaching those 3 to 5 lessons. So we're going to wrap up that before we move on and do a little more looking at how preconceptions can impact student learning. But hopefully, given that information that you previewed, thinking about how you assess your students at the beginning of your lessons will be important in determining what do they already know or think they know about the topic, and are there some misconceptions that they have or some conceptions that need to be built on. And so that should show up in your lesson plans in terms of just considering that and creating some sort of pre-assessment for your lessons. So having said that, this week you're going to do a draft of one of your lessons. I don't care which lesson you submit to me. The goal is that you demonstrate that you can take the things that we have been learning in this class in terms of good planning practices for science inquiry instruction. And so whichever lesson you submit should demonstrate things like your assessments align with inquiry. So they should be performance tasks, not selected response. Like you don't want to use a multiple choice quiz to demonstrate that you understand how to assess inquiry. Now you may use those in your classroom, and sometimes those are appropriate even in inquiry, but for the purposes of this lesson and this draft, you want to really try to highlight the things we've been learning about inquiry. What's important is to have student-led investigation, to have students inquiring, asking questions, using phenomenon to engage students in some sort of interest, making it relevant to students, trying to connect it to your students' experiences. So those are the things I want you to focus on and think about as you're planning this lesson using the framework that you've already built with your backwards design and your assessment plan. So just a draft is due this week. You will get feedback on these and then submit a final draft. This will give you time to incorporate feedback before you submit these if you're completing them for other purposes like your teaching experiences week 8 and 9 or for your supervisor. So you will have a chance to get my feedback on these and revise them if you're double dipping. Now you don't have to double dip. You can use different lessons for different purposes or even modify the same lessons for different purposes. So keep that in mind. So the other assignment for this week is you're going to also develop all your assessments and I modified this a bit. So just for lesson 1. So if you've already done all of them for the whole unit, great, you're ahead of the game. That's going to help you if you are, especially if you're going to be teaching these. But if you are not ahead of the game and you're still working on this, you just need to turn in the assessments that you developed for the one lesson that you're submitting to me. So that includes any questions that you're going to present to students, like if you're going to do an informal assessment, like a discussion, then you need to include questions that you're going to ask students. If you're going to give them a graphic organizer, for instance, or a lab report to complete, that needs to be attached. If you're going to do a Kahoot, I want to see a screenshot of the questions. A Kahoot, again, might be a quick way to assess students, but it's not really aligned well with inquiry if you're using it to assess their content knowledge. Okay, so the to-do list for this week is just those 2 things. So draft of lesson 1 and assessments for lesson plan 1, and those are due on November 6th on Canvas. So good luck with that. Hopefully it didn't delay you too much and I've answered all your questions, but if not, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to assist you. And if anybody did get behind the ball, just let me know. I'm happy to give you a couple extra days to get these turned in if you did. So have a good weekend and I will see you next week.